Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jay Tita with Metabolic Effect, and I want to talk to you today about the concept of trigger foods. This is a concept that we have been talking about for some time at Metabolic Effect, and it's oftentimes confusing for some of our followers, so we wanted to kind of explain a little bit about what we mean when we use the term trigger foods. There's really three distinct mechanisms that we believe trigger foods have in people, and the way we define trigger foods is really any food that slows or even reverses your fat loss goals. And normally trigger foods are hidden foods. In other words, you just don't really know that they are there. Trigger foods have three different mechanisms. As I said, one of the mechanisms is that these trigger foods can cause compensatory reactions in the body that lead you to have increased hunger, increased cravings, or energy fluctuations that then result in you eating more of the wrong things later. Examples of this would be things like coffee or diet soda or diet gum, any kind of sweet or stimulating beverage that sort of tricks the body, raises stress hormones or raises insulin, and then results in blood sugar fluctuations, which can cause hunger, cravings, and energy now or later in the day. So that's one mechanism that we need to be aware of. Another mechanism is that we have to understand that foods interact differently depending on the person that is eating them. Dairy, for me and my metabolism, may slow fat burning and have an exaggerated insulin response. But with your metabolism, you may just do fine with dairy. Same with nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are usually great for fat loss seekers because the fat is not digested efficiently in most people. But some people do very poorly on nuts and seeds because they extract more of the fat, and that can be a trigger food for them. Also, trigger foods have another unique mechanism that we're just now starting to understand, a mechanism that is really immune related. In other words, certain foods can interact with our immune system. What happens is certain proteins, gluten would be an example, get into our bloodstream. The immune system reacts to those just like it would any invader, and it looks at proteins on that gluten molecule or that protein and then can find proteins that look similar in other body parts, such as the thyroid, and then the immune system starts attacking the thyroid, disrupting the efficiency of our fat-burning machinery. And that is another key concept with trigger foods. So you have these three mechanisms: the compensatory reactions that can occur when you're eating hidden trigger foods, the fact that certain foods that may be fine for others are not fine for you, and then you have these immune reactions with trigger foods. Some of the most common trigger foods are really things that cause these compensatory reactions, things like diet soda, which I mentioned, coffee, and then other things that are tend to slow metabolism or interact differently in people with different metabolisms, stuff like milk products, dairy products, nuts and seeds, things like that. Some trigger foods are things like even alcohol, which most people would think is a fat-storing food in general, but alcohol in moderation for a lot of people, 1 time or 2 times on the weekend, is not usually an issue, but for some people, even having alcohol on the weekend 1 or 2 times ends up being a trigger food. So that is a really important concept to understand with these different types of trigger foods. And really any food can be a trigger food, but those are the most common ones. So you might say, okay, Jade, how do I know if I have a trigger food? One of the things that really keys you off is that we really like to talk about having a reward meal or a cheat meal 1 time every weekend. And one of the reasons that we do that is for psychological advantages. Obviously, food is fun. People need to have fun and eat food and not make this a lifestyle, make it easy for them. So that makes that easy for them and gives them that psychological advantage when they know I can at least enjoy food 1 time a week. But also, usually when you're eating very clean throughout the week and then you add certain foods in like dairy foods or alcohol or nuts and seeds or things like that or desserts, you'll find that you do not feel well in several days after that. Even 4 days later, you might still be feeling bad from your reward meal. If that is the case, then you can pretty much guarantee there might be a trigger food or something negatively interacting with your immune system that you had at one of those cheat meals. The other thing is, if you've raised protein and got your carbohydrate tipping point under control and have enough fiber in your diet and you're still getting insatiable cravings and energy fluctuations and things like that, then you may want to be looking at trigger foods. Is coffee negatively impacting you? Even black coffee or diet sodas negatively impacting you, those kinds of things. Another way that you can look at trigger foods is that if you suspect that you have a trigger food, simply cut that trigger food out. So for example, if I suspect I have an issue with dairy, what I may want to do is cut that out of my diet, stop all cheeses, stop all whey proteins and things like that, track my hunger, cravings, and energy and fat loss results, and see if I do better with it than without it. Then what I can do is what we call challenging that food, where I add that food back in a high amount one time, then I wait 4 days after having that food and see if I get any reactions. This is how you can tell if you're getting any immune reactions with trigger foods. So what you do is you have the food, 1 dose, like maybe I have a tall glass of milk, and then I don't do that food again for the next 4 days, and I wait to see if I get any reactions. What kind of reactions might I get? Well, maybe I'll get reactions with skin sensitivity, or maybe I'll get excess mucus production. Maybe I'll see that I start holding a lot of water. But what people need to understand is that trigger foods really are a concept that is so important to the fat loss and the ME lifestyle, because you need to understand what your fat loss formula is, and therefore finding your trigger foods is absolutely so important, and is also one of the hardest things to do in the fat loss lifestyle. So that gives you a little introduction into trigger foods, how to find them, what are the most common types, and what to be looking for so that you can remove these from your diet. So I hope that's helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.